Hollywood may have claimed science fiction as its crown jewel, but France was busy rewriting the rules in ways that stunned even the Americans. While Hollywood gave us rockets and laser beams, the French dared to ask stranger, deeper questions. What if time itself was broken? What if dreams were stolen? What if gods walked Paris streets? Ready to meet the French films that didn't just rival Hollywood, they redefined sci-fi forever. Let's begin. Le Voyage dans la Lune, 1902. Before Hollywood even knew what a spaceship looked like, Georges Méliès was firing a bullet-shaped capsule straight into the eye of the moon. Le Voyage dans la Lune isn't just an old film, it's the starting line of science fiction on screen. Released in 1902, it came from a magician-turned-filmmaker who thought cinema could be more than stage plays. And he proved it. The setup is playful but revolutionary. Eccentric astronomers build a rocket, launch it with a cannon, and discover a lunar world filled with bizarre moon creatures. You might laugh at the papier-mâché sets today, but back then, this was nothing short of sorcery. Méliès used trick photography, dissolves, and stop-motion effects to turn fantasy into moving spectacle. When audiences saw the iconic image of the rocket landing in the man in the moon's face, jaws dropped. This wasn't just storytelling, it was pure imagination leaping onto celluloid. And here's the kicker. Le Voyage dans la Lune made waves far beyond France. It influenced filmmakers worldwide, inspired Hollywood pioneers like Edwin S. Porter, and practically laid the blueprint for everything from Flash Gordon to Star Wars. Think about it. The French did the first space opera before America even figured out what sci-fi meant. Méliès may not have had CGI or million-dollar budgets, but he had vision, and sometimes that's all it takes to change cinema history. Le Testament du Docteur Cordelier, 1959. When Jean Renoir, son of the legendary painter, decided to tackle a sci-fi horror story, the result was as unsettling as it was unforgettable. Le Testament du Docteur Cordelier isn't your usual monster flick. It's a French reworking of Robert Louis Stevenson's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, shot for television in 1959, but with an intensity that felt cinematic. The story follows Dr. Cordelier, a respectable psychiatrist who secretly experiments on himself, unleashing a grotesque alter ego named Opal. Instead of going for Hollywood-style theatrics, Renoir shoots it with stark realism, often outdoors on the streets of Paris. That choice makes the horror feel disturbingly close. Hyde, here as Opal, isn't just a monster with makeup. He's a sneering, jittery embodiment of suppressed urges, a man stripped of morality. Watching him stalk the Parisian boulevards is like watching civilization itself unravel. But what makes this film stand out isn't just its shock factor. Renoir saw Cordelier as a metaphor for modern science, unchained from ethics, a society playing with forces it can't control. The grainy, almost documentary style blurs the line between fiction and nightmare. For French audiences in 1959, still recovering from war and facing rapid modernization, the warning felt uncomfortably timely. Hollywood may have had more money, but Renoir brought a raw, intellectual edge to the Jekyll story. Le Testament du Docteur Cordelier wasn't just a retelling. It was a sci-fi parable about the monster lurking inside progress itself. Alphaville, 1965. Now imagine a sci-fi movie shot with almost no special effects, no model spaceships, and no futuristic gadgets. That's Jean-Luc Godard's Alphaville, and it still feels more alien than most big-budget blockbusters. Released in 1965, it fused film noir with science fiction in a way Hollywood never dared. Eddie Constantine plays Lemmy Caution, a trenchcoat-wearing detective who wanders into Alphaville, a city run not by politicians, but by a cold, calculating computer called Alpha 60. Forget flashing lights or shiny chrome. Godard used real Paris locations, glass towers, neon-lit streets, stark hotel lobbies, and turned them into a terrifying future world. The message? You don't need rocket ships to imagine dystopia. Sometimes it's already here, hiding in plain sight. What makes Alphaville unforgettable is its tone. The city is cold, stripped of emotion, where love and poetry are outlawed. Alpha 60 speaks in a deep, robotic growl, reducing humans to logic problems. And yet, at the heart of the film is a strange romance, a fight for tenderness in a mechanical world. That tension between sterile control and messy humanity is the film's soul. Critics called it confusing, even absurd. But years later, Alphaville became a cult classic, influencing cyberpunk and dystopian cinema worldwide. You can feel its DNA in Blade Runner, The Matrix, and countless other stories about machines ruling humans. Hollywood may have built bigger cities, but Goddard built a scarier one, because his future didn't look like fantasy. It looked like tomorrow. La Jetée, 1962. Most sci-fi films bombard you with flashy effects and non-stop action. Chris Marker's La Jetée does the opposite. It tells a time travel story almost entirely through still photographs. And somehow, it ends up being one of the most haunting sci-fi films ever made. Released in 1962, La Jetée unfolds after a devastating world war. Humanity survives in underground bunkers, desperate to change the past or reach a better future. A man is chosen for an experiment. He's sent back through time using his memories as the key. Through stark black and white stills, we see him fall in love with a woman on a sunlit pier. Those brief moments of happiness clash with the grim reality of his mission. And then comes the twist, one of the greatest in sci-fi history. The man realizes he has seen his own death as a child, watching himself die in front of the woman he loves. That cyclical, tragic fate elevates La Jetée from a short film to a cinematic poem about memory, time, and inevitability. What's astonishing is the emotional punch Marker achieves with so little. One photo of a woman opening her eyes feels more alive than entire Hollywood productions, with explosions and spaceships. The film was so influential that it directly inspired Terry Gilliam's 12 Monkeys decades later. La Jetée proves something vital. Sci-fi doesn't need spectacle to shake you. Sometimes a series of frozen moments can tell you more about time than a billion-dollar blockbuster ever could. Je t'aime, 1968. Alain Resnais wasn't content with straightforward storytelling. In Je t'aime, he turned science fiction into an emotional puzzle. Released in 1968, the film follows Claude, a man recovering from a failed suicide attempt, who becomes the subject of a time travel experiment. The plan is simple. Send him back 1 minute into the past. The result is chaos. Claude finds himself bouncing through fragmented moments of his life, especially his troubled relationship with a woman named Katrine. Instead of controlling time, he's trapped inside it, reliving fragments out of order. What might sound like a confusing gimmick becomes, under Resnais's direction, a heartbreaking meditation on love, regret, and the impossibility of fixing the past. Hollywood has dabbled with nonlinear storytelling, but Je t'aime dives in fully. Scenes cut abruptly, conversations stutter, time itself refuses to behave. Watching it feels like being inside someone's mind as memory collapses. It's frustrating, moving, and unforgettable. Critics didn't know what to make of it in 1968. Some dismissed it as pretentious, others hailed it as visionary. But its influence is undeniable. You can see echoes of it in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind and countless films exploring fractured time. Resnais didn't give audiences a neat resolution. Instead, he left them with the raw truth. That memory is a prison, and time is never under our control. That's not just science fiction. That's human reality dressed as sci-fi tragedy. La Planète Sauvage, Fantastic Planet, 1973. When most people think of sci-fi animation, they picture Disney or a sleek Japanese anime. But in 1973, René Laloux gave the world something stranger, darker, and frankly unforgettable. La Planète Sauvage, known in English as Fantastic Planet, is an animated trip into a world where humans are not rulers, they're pets. The setup is simple, but devastating. On a faraway planet, tiny humans called Oms are enslaved by gigantic blue aliens, the Drogs. To the Drogs, humans are toys, nuisances, or pests. But as the Oms begin to rebel, the balance of power shifts. Sounds familiar? That's because Lalou was building an allegory for oppression, colonization, and resistance. And he did it with hallucinatory, surreal visuals that make the film feel like a living dream. Every frame looks like it was drawn from the pages of a psychedelic sketchbook. The drags meditate in bizarre trances. Alien landscapes morph like nightmares. Even simple movements feel uncanny, as if physics itself has been rewritten. Watching it, you realize this isn't just sci-fi, it's philosophy smuggled into a cartoon. The film was celebrated at Cannes, winning the Special Jury Prize, and became a cult sensation worldwide. It didn't need Hollywood's budgets or special effects. It relied on sheer imagination. La Planète Sauvage influenced everything from music videos to modern animation aesthetics. And while Hollywood gave us clean heroes and villains, this French masterpiece gave us something scarier, the idea that we might be the ants under someone else's boot. Les Maîtres du Temps, Time. Masters, 1982. A decade after Fantastic Planet, René Laloux returned with another animated odyssey, this time bringing legendary comic book artist Moebius into the mix. Les Maîtres du Temps, or Time Masters, feels like a forgotten space epic that somehow slipped past Hollywood. The story kicks off with a boy stranded on a hostile alien world after his father is killed. A crew of interstellar adventurers races to rescue him, but, as with all great French sci-fi, nothing is simple. Strange creatures, shifting alliances, and time-bending twists fill the journey. At its core, the film asks a question bigger than any rescue mission. What does it mean to control time itself? What sets Les Maîtres du Temps apart is its look. Moebius, co-creator of iconic comics like Blueberry and The In-Call, designed the characters and worlds. His fingerprints are everywhere. Angular spaceships, grotesque aliens, dreamlike horizons. It's a visual feast that still feels futuristic today. Hollywood was churning out polished space operas by the early 80s, but Laloux and Moebius gave us something more raw, more visionary. The film didn't make much money, but it gained a cult following, especially among comic fans and animators. You can trace its influence in everything from Heavy Metal magazine to modern sci-fi aesthetics. Watching it now feels like peering into an alternate future, where French animation became the global standard. Hollywood gave us Star Wars. France, with Les Maîtres du Temps, gave us a space dream tinged with strangeness and melancholy. And in its own way, that's just as powerful. Gandahar, 1987. René Laloux wasn't done yet. In 1987, he delivered Gandahar, his third major animated sci-fi, and perhaps his most ambitious. Based on Jean-Pierre Andrevon's novel, the film is a slow-burn nightmare about paradise unraveling. At first, the utopian world of Gandahar seems idyllic, lush landscapes, gentle people, harmony everywhere. But then the attacks begin. Mysterious biomechanical mutants, half flesh and half machine, swarm the land, slaughtering its inhabitants. The twist? These monsters aren't invaders. They're the future of Gandahar itself, warped and sent back through time. The society that thought it was perfect created its own destroyers. That premise is pure science fiction poetry. Civilization undone not by aliens, but by its own evolution. And Laloux's visual style makes it all the more haunting. The designs are dreamlike, at times beautiful, at times grotesque. One minute you're gazing at ethereal landscapes, the next you're staring into the eyes of living machines built for death. The English-dubbed version, retitled Light Years, was released in the US with voices from Glenn Close and Christopher Plummer, but the French original carries more weight. Beneath its surreal surface, Gandahar is about complacency, arrogance, and the terrifying truth that utopias don't last. Hollywood often paints destruction as a battle between good and evil. Gandahar suggests something darker, that sometimes our worst enemies are the shadows of ourselves. For an animated film, that's a chilling message, and one that makes Gandahar linger long after the credits roll. Le Dernier Combat, The Last Battle, 1983. Luc Besson's first feature wasn't a flashy action movie or a polished studio product. It was a grim, black-and-white vision of humanity's collapse. Le Dernier Combat, or The Last Battle, arrived in 1983 with almost no dialogue, because in this post-apocalyptic world, words themselves are gone. The plot follows a lone survivor wandering through desolate ruins, scavenging for food, fighting off enemies, and clinging to scraps of companionship. The silence isn't a gimmick, it's a statement. In Besson's future, civilization has disintegrated so completely that language, that most human trait, has vanished. All that's left is instinct. Shot on a tiny budget, the film uses stark contrasts and empty cityscapes to evoke an end-of-the-world atmosphere more convincingly than many Hollywood epics. Where American cinema often showed apocalypse with explosions and chaos, Besson gave us quiet desolation. The silence makes every fight, every betrayal, and every fleeting alliance feel more brutal. Critics were stunned by the film's rawness. It announced Besson as a major talent, and its influence can be seen in later works like Mad Max, Fury Road, which also relied heavily on visual storytelling over dialogue. The Last Battle proves that sci-fi doesn't need spectacle to feel big. Sometimes, emptiness itself is the special effect. Watching it is like staring into humanity's possible future and realizing how quickly words, trust, and even hope can vanish. Subway 1985. Just 2 years after The Last Battle, Luc Besson delivered something completely different, but equally strange. Subway isn't your typical sci-fi film. It's a neon-drenched fever dream set in the underground tunnels of Paris. Yet its futuristic style, surreal tone, and obsession with rebellion make it feel closer to Blade Runner than a crime drama. The story follows a slick thief, played by Christopher Lambert, who hides out in the Paris metro after stealing incriminating documents. Down there, he discovers a hidden society of outcasts, roller skating gangs, eccentric drifters, and a bizarre makeshift rock band. The subway becomes its own city, detached from the rules above, brimming with its own laws and logic. What makes Subway stand out is its style: fluorescent lights, pounding music, eccentric costumes. It's part sci-fi, part punk opera. Besson transforms a mundane subway system into a futuristic underworld where anything feels possible. Hollywood was going big with special effects in the 80s, but Besson used mood, color, and attitude to create something equally otherworldly. Subway was a hit in France and turned Lambert and Isabelle Adjani into stars. For international audiences, it was a reminder that French cinema could do cool future worlds just as well as Hollywood, but with a distinctly European flavor. It's not about flying cars or aliens. It's about escape, rebellion, and carving out freedom in a place society has already discarded. Subway proved that sometimes the future isn't up in the stars. It's right under our feet, glowing in neon. La Cité des Enfants Perdus, The City of Lost Children, 1995. If Tim Burton ever got lost in a French carnival funhouse, the result might look a lot like La Cité des Enfants Perdus. Directed by Marc Caro and Jean-Pierre Jeunet, this 1995 fantasy sci-fi hybrid is as eerie as it is unforgettable. The premise: a scientist named Crank cannot dream, so he kidnaps children to steal theirs. Already chilling, right? Visually, the film is a marvel. Everything drips with atmosphere: rusty docks, twisted machinery, foggy streets that feel like they've been soaked in nightmares. Dominique Pignon plays multiple roles with his usual manic brilliance, while Ron Perlman, yes, an American in a French film, delivers a haunting performance as a circus strongman trying to save a stolen child. But beyond its gothic style lies a deeper sci-fi core. It's a story about memory, about the fragility of childhood, about what happens when innocence is treated like currency. Hollywood, by the mid-90s, was busy pumping out polished blockbusters. The French, meanwhile, were crafting something stranger, darker, and arguably more enduring. Critics praised its visuals, and though it didn't dominate the box office, it gained cult status. You can see its influence later in Junet's Amélie, and even in Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth. La Cité des Enfants Perdus proves that French sci-fi didn't just rival Hollywood. It carved its own twisted, dreamlike path, one that still lingers in the mind long after the credits roll. Immortel, Ad Vitam, 2004. Imagine ancient Egyptian gods descending not on pyramids but on a futuristic Paris. and you'll understand why Enki Bilal's Immortel Ad Vitam still turns heads. Released in 2004, it was one of the earliest attempts to blend live action with extensive digital animation, a bold experiment long before Hollywood made motion capture standard. The story is wild. Horus, the falcon-headed god, descends to Paris in the year 2095, looking for a human host to extend his life. He finds it in Alcide Nicopole, a prisoner just released from a cryogenic sentence. Together, they navigate a city of mutants, corrupt politicians, and strange hybrids, all wrapped in a surreal digital landscape. What makes Immortal stand out isn't just its mythology meets sci-fi plot, but its aesthetic. Bilal, a comic book artist, brought his graphic novel visuals to life, creating a Paris that feels simultaneously ancient and futuristic. Some of the CGI has aged awkwardly, but the ambition is undeniable. Hollywood was still cautious about mixing such disparate elements in the early 2000s, but the French jumped head first. The result? A film that's messy, experimental, and unforgettable. Immortal showed that sci-fi could embrace myth, digital innovation, and European eccentricity all at once. It may not have been a box office smash, but its cult following proves that sometimes bold experiments matter more than safe hits. Eden Log, 2007. Most sci-fi films take you upward, to the stars, to towering cities, to the edge of the universe. Eden Log drags you downward into the Earth's guts, where survival is anything but glamorous. Directed by Frank Vestiel in 2007, it's one of the bleakest French sci-fi films you'll ever see. The story begins with a man waking up at the bottom of a dark pit, injured, confused, and stripped of memory. As he climbs through tunnels filled with strange creatures and decaying technology, he pieces together a brutal truth. The underground world isn't just a prison. It's a machine built on exploitation, feeding off the workers trapped inside it. Shot in washed-out grays and blues, Eden Log feels claustrophobic, almost suffocating. The monsters are grotesque, the corridors endless, the atmosphere soaked in dread. It's part horror, part sci-fi, and entirely unsettling. Hollywood's big-budget dystopias often give you rebels, heroes, and explosions. Eden Log strips that away. Here, survival is ugly, memory is fragile, and the system is unbreakable. It's not a crowd pleaser, it's a nightmare with a projector. While critics were divided, fans of experimental sci-fi praised its originality. For anyone tired of shiny futures, Eden Log delivers the opposite. A descent into humanity's darkest basement. Renaissance 2006. Imagine a sci-fi film shot entirely in black and white, but not the grainy kind from the 1940s. Renaissance looks like a motion comic brought to life, a stark, rotoscoped vision of futuristic Paris. Directed by Christian Volkmann in 2006, it was one of the most ambitious animated films France ever produced. The plot is classic science fiction noir. A detective, voiced by Daniel Craig in the English version, investigates the kidnapping of a scientist tied to a massive corporation. Soon, he uncovers a conspiracy involving immortality research, surveillance, and corporate greed. Yes, it sounds like Blade Runner, but visually, Renaissance goes its own way. Every frame is drenched in black and white, with no shades of gray. Characters move like shadows etched in neon, while Paris becomes a labyrinth of glass, steel, and secrets. The style is divisive. Some viewers find it stunning, others exhausting, but no one can deny its boldness. Hollywood rarely takes risks like this. In 2006, most sci-fi was chasing special effects realism. The French, by contrast, gave us a graphic novel come alive. Renaissance didn't break records at the box office, but it earned awards and respect for pushing animation forward. It proved that sci-fi doesn't have to look polished to feel futuristic. Sometimes stripping away color reveals more than adding it ever could. Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets, 2017. When Luc Besson finally tackled Valerian, fans of French comics cheered. After all, the original series by Pierre Christin and Jean-Claude Mézières had inspired George Lucas when he created Star Wars. So in 2017, France gave Hollywood a taste of its own medicine, a massive, effects-heavy space opera made with French money and style. The story follows Valerian and Laureline, intergalactic agents racing to uncover a conspiracy threatening Alpha, the city of 1,000 planets. Alpha itself is a wonder, a sprawling space station where countless alien species coexist. The film is stuffed with dazzling visuals, from shape-shifting performers to underwater civilizations. Was it perfect? Number? Critics hammered its clunky dialogue and uneven pacing. But here's the thing. Visually, Valerian rivals anything Hollywood has ever put on screen. The alien designs, the world building, the sheer scope. It's jaw-dropping. Besson poured his passion into every pixel, and it shows. Valerian is proof that France wasn't just quietly rivaling Hollywood anymore. It was standing toe-to-toe, flexing the very comic book imagination that Hollywood once borrowed from. Even if it didn't break box office records, it proved that French sci-fi could play on the biggest stage of all. In the end, Valerian wasn't just a movie. It was a full-circle moment, France reminding Hollywood where some of its greatest ideas were born. So, there you have it. 15 French sci-fi films that didn't just follow Hollywood's lead, they challenged it, twisted it, and sometimes flat-out beat it at its own game. From Méliès's cardboard rocket to Besson's digital galaxies, France proved imagination doesn't need a California zip code. Which of these strange, daring visions have you seen? Which one shocked you most? Drop your thoughts below, hit subscribe, and remember, sci-fi's future wasn't only in Hollywood. Paris had plenty of it too.